Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Helt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
I'm Jack Reeder and honored to be stepping in as guest host for Gary Helt on today's episode. Joining me today is Felecia Dixson, an enrolled agent, certified tax resolution consultant, and author and national trainer. Felecia is the founder of Dixson Tax Resolution Services, where she helps individuals and business owners resolve IRS issues, stop collections, and most importantly, restore peace of mind. With more than 40 years of experience working directly with the IRS, Felecia has helped clients stop wage garnishments, release liens, prevent levies, and resolve unfiled returns through honest, customized strategies. What sets her apart is her straightforward approach, no scare tactics, no judgment, just clear answers and real solutions. Welcome to the podcast, Felecia.
Thank you, Jack, for having me. It's an honor.
Let's just take a second to go back in time, 40 years or whatever, to how you got started in the tax business.
Long story short, right? Long story short, I actually started preparing returns when I was a junior in high school. I was a math major and a business major. And, it just seemed to be the thing. All my friends were going to work and everybody needed assistance. And I was always the girl in school that they would say, hey, if you need help, go talk to Felecia. She'll help you.
All right.
So when I graduated from high school, I was very young. And I say that because I started my senior year at 16, graduated just barely 17, went straight from high school graduation to my very first and full-time job with the Indiana Department of Revenue Corporate Tax Division as a corporate tax examiner.
All right, that's great. So back to today, when someone first receives a letter or notice from the IRS, what's the biggest mistake they tend to make right away?
They ignore it.
Okay.
That's the biggest mistake that 98% of most people do. They ignore it. They open it up, they read it and go, oh, I'll take care of it. But they set it aside, and I call them ostriches. And so we all know what an ostrich does. And so most people do that. They've got this hole, which is the letter from the IRS. And they've just buried their head and said, okay, well, out of sight, out of mind, and we'll set it over here and we'll take care of it later. Well, then you have that trickle effect of later becomes next month, next year, and it just snowballs. So, but that's the biggest issue. The biggest thing is just ignore it.
So many business owners believe IRS problems only happen when someone does something wrong. What are the most common situations that actually cause tax issues?
So if we're talking business owners, as you just mentioned, that's going to be wrapped around payroll taxes because and I just saw this come across where there's a company that filed their 941s but couldn't afford to pay the tax. So they didn't pay the payroll taxes. Well, in the realm of the IRS and the way they perceive payroll is that payroll taxes, when you don't pay them in, you're stealing. So in that big schema of things, because what they say you've done is you've taken it out of your employee's paycheck and they entrusted you to pay this in. Well, then when you don't pay this in, you stole from your employees. So that's the biggest business contingent. Now, there are other things that could happen if you have partnerships, those kinds of things. And those could be just audits that just appear. And we don't really know why audits happen. We can ask an agent when they call and say, hey, or send us notice that your client's getting audited. We can ask them what trumped this cause to be audited. Sometimes they don't even know. Sometimes it's just a matter of Maybe they run an algorithm and they're doing a program inside the IRS, and unfortunately, they got the luck of the draw. The other big thing a company might find themselves in a pickle with is not just not filing tax returns in general. They don't file 941s. They don't file state filings. They don't file if they're an S corp, they're not filing the S corporation return. And that being said, with an S corp, one other caveat to that one is reasonable comp.
Let's assume that someone does not ignore that first notice and they make an effort to respond, and then they're in some way going back and forth with the IRS. At what point should someone stop trying to handle the issue on their own and bring in a professional?
I personally think that no one should try to do it on their own, ever, from the first notice forward, only because we got to remember that myself and many others in the industry, we have done this time and time and time again. So we're calling, we know what to say and how to say it correctly so that we're not trumping up the agent. And sometimes it's a matter of educating the agent on the customer service rep on the phone. And I have had that happen where I spent 4.5 hours on one phone call on one account, and I'm literally citing the Internal Revenue Service Manual to her, saying, "Hey, go. This is what you need to look at. This is where we're playing, what part of the IRM we're playing in." And she just didn't know, especially now with all of the personnel changes that happened over the last year were massive. And so we do have a lot of new agents that aren't as educated as the ones that took the buyouts and retired. And so there's a lot of caveats to that, and just knowing what to say and how to say it and when to make those calls. So I think, if you're going to try to do it, great. That's really every individual person's choice. But within that first phone call, if you're not getting resolution of any sorts and you just kind of feel like it's constant, you need to hire somebody. But my personal opinion is, once you get that letter, you should just hire somebody to help resolve it and get it over with. So sometimes it's an easy phone call, can be resolved with the phone call. Sometimes it can't be.
Okay. So a little bit further down the road, let's assume this hypothetical person has either ignored the initial letter or notice, or they've been trying to talk about it at least, but they're actually in a situation where their collection proceedings have begun. Let's say then they say, all right, well, gee, I need help. They call you. What options are still available at that point, or is it just too?
Oh, no, it's never too late. We always say it's never too late. We always have options. So depending on where they're at, if it's gone to collections and now they're to the point where they're sending out a CP 504, which is the letter that says, hey, or an LT 11 that says, we're going to attempt to levy. This is your final notice of collection. You need to be contacting us, because now we can get some help with maybe getting a hold placed on the account until we've had time to review what needs to be done, what actions need to be taken. Maybe there's returns missing that need to be resolved. Because remember, in order to get into any type of compliance with the IRS, you have to first be in compliance. All of returns have to be filed and on the system. So if you have open filings, we can't do anything until that's resolved. Once that's resolved, we need to go in and place a hold on the collections, and maybe even file a CP2 notice where we file for, to say, hey, we want to hold out our taxpayers' rights to be able to go to appeals, or, there's just a lot of things that we can do. And, if we don't get the satisfaction that we need once we get to that point, and the IRS is just really, it depends on the agent we get. I don't find it too hard, but we do have appeals, and we have the ability to go to appeals. And so most individuals don't know how that process works. And that's really where hiring a professional can be very beneficial, because we do know the different processes that we can follow.
Okay. So just thinking in terms of, let's call it a tax resolution plan, and assuming that the first phase is to make sure all those filings are complete. And now we're talking just, with how to resolve paying the money,
So,
or
yeah.
what are the different ways that could, how could that look for, besides
So,
most people can't say, all right, oh, okay, now I know, I'm ready to send in the money.
I mean, I have clients that owe anywhere from 4,000 to 2 million. So, and on both sides of that, on both levels, that can be very detrimental to either one, depending on the client's financial situation. So, what we then do is we then pull a financial report, and based on what we see on the transcripts, and we do a transcript analysis where we're pulling down the transcripts, we're looking at everything you owe, how much do you owe, when are the CSEDs, the collection expiration statute dates, when do they run? So if the returns were already filed, they were filed, and now you're just in collections, and we need to figure out what we can do moving forward. So if we can do some penalty abatements, we're going to look for that. We're going to look for all of the avenues that we can get first to reduce the liability. And then we're going to also look at your financials and say, if we're going to look at your collection due process and say whether or not how much can they afford to pay? Can we get them on an installment agreement, full pay installment agreement? Maybe they're a partial pay installment agreement. Maybe they're an offer candidate. If they're an offer candidate, then we want to make sure that they get the benefit of an offer. So all of these things, there's one's not right and one's not wrong. It really depends on each individual client and their financial situation.
Okay, so I know one of the things that, or I imagine, because I fortunately haven't had to do this myself, but it must be, besides financially challenging, it must be emotionally challenging for clients. Could you talk about that and what you've seen?
I've seen anywhere from, as I said, let's say take the person that only owes $4,000, and that's their livelihood. They're living on a fixed income. They can't afford to do much. And so if we can get that resolution, I've had clients sit in my office and cry. I mean, literally that stress of not being able to sleep at night and just being able to breathe. Clients really do feel, I mean, taxpayers that are in this situation, it is extremely stressful for them. And that is one of the passionate things that I love about what I do, is being able to give my clients that peace of mind that they have somebody that believes in them. And again, as you said, there is no judgment. Everybody deserves the ability to have a fresh start. That's not a fresh start program. That program doesn't exist. We hear that a lot, but it really doesn't exist any longer. A fresh start program truly is nothing more than an offer and compromise if they qualify. And that's the big if. But I literally, again, going back to what you asked, I've literally had clients cry and say, this is such a burden that is lifted, that I now can breathe a little bit easier. It's kind of like when clients go to a collection, the collection agencies call them, and now they're scared and they go to an attorney, they file for bankruptcy or something to that effect. And they just feel this utmost relief internally, because as we all know, stress can kill. And we don't want that. We don't want our clients sick. We want them to live a successful life, and we want it to be comfortable as it can be.
So, Felecia, I'm sure you notice it. I notice it. There are lots of, I would call them almost overly zealous ads on TV and radio from companies that, are talking about this subject. If you owe IRS, if you owe money to the IRS, give us a call, blah, blah, blah. Not talking about specifically those ads or those companies, but do you have clients who come to you after having made those phone calls or talked to those, let's say national companies? And if so, what kinds of stories do you hear about maybe
Oh,
that things weren't handled very well, or that they spent money on something and got nothing in return.
I had one who spent over $12,000, and this was many years ago, and all she got was an installment agreement. And I went, holy wow, cow, we could have done that easily. And I wound up doing an audit reconsideration. She had gone through an audit. The auditor denied everything because she didn't get them the stuff that they needed, and she was lost. She didn't really understand what she needed to provide, and she didn't have guidance. So that's where we step in as representatives and give that guidance, so that we're the ones looking at it and going, okay, we need this, 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 and this, and then get that information to us. We review it, we put it in a package to make sure that it goes to the representative correctly. And that way we kind of try to alleviate that problem. And I said, for what? And when he told me, I just gasped and said, when did you pay this money? He said, today. I said, if you'll call them back today and get your money back, I can do that for half the price, because I don't have the overhead that the big box companies do. I mean, it's just plain and simple. And I give personalized service versus the companies, and I'm not saying they're bad, but I'm just saying, I know how they work. You get one person today, and then you call back, and it's like anybody else. Sometimes you don't always get the same person, and it's hard, because then you're telling your story over and over and over again.
So how do you structure your fees, and how does it compare to, maybe those big companies or others?
That's
you just talk about that.
I have a flat fee just to get started, to pull my power of attorney and to do a transcript analysis. So I'm going to pull the transcripts, and I'm going to go back to more likely about 2015, and I'm going to go forward to 2028 just to make sure that I'm covered. I have called and they've said, oh, well, wait a minute, your power of attorney doesn't cover everything. You need a new power of attorney. So I don't charge for an additional power of attorney. I just call the client and say, hey, look, I need to increase my years. And so we start with a new power of attorney. And so I have a flat fee for that, and I try to work on flat fee basis, and I don't really want to quote my fees on this, but
yeah,
the reality of it is I'm more inexpensive than a lot of the box companies, but I'm not as expensive as a tax attorney who, when they charge $750, $800 an hour. My hourly rate, if I'm charging an hourly rate, is $375 that I will give. And it's comparable. I mean, I really am very big on communication and making sure that if I get a letter, I'm letting the clients know they get a letter. I've gotten this letter. This is what it says. I want them, I'm trying to get out in front of it before they do. So they're not going, hey, Felecia, what is this? I want them to know I've seen it and that this is what we're looking at. And also, if we need additional information, if that letter says, hey, I need XYZ, then I'm immediately saying, here's the letter we received. I need you to provide me with the following information.
So you mentioned tax attorney. So are there times when you need to recommend that someone use an attorney, or are you able to just handle all of those things instead of them having to hire an attorney, or how does that work?
So for the most part, I can do just almost 98% of what a tax attorney can do. That is the only piece I cannot do. So if I do have a case that needs to go to tax court, then I will reach out and find somebody. The beautiful thing about what I do and who I'm, the group of people that I work with, my team, as I like to call them in my back office, is Eric Green and Tax Help Network. I'm one of his trainers. And so I have Eric to reach out to, and Eric can help me find an attorney, in whatever city that the client is in, because that's where it has to be. They have to be able to work locally if that's the case. So I have the people. I know people that know people that know people.
And so that brings up a question, Felecia. What limits geographically are there on your practice? In other words, if someone is listening to this podcast and they say, oh, gee, but I'm in Alaska, or I'm in California, or I'm in Florida, or I don't know if Felicia could help me. Are there any limitations on your practice, and what's the reach of your practice geographically?
So right now, the reach of my practice is from the Virgin Islands to Alaska to upstate New York to California and in between.
Okay,
So because I'm an enrolled agent and not a CPA, my license comes through the Internal Revenue Service. Therefore, I am licensed to practice in every state in the United States.
okay, excellent.
So if you have a problem and you live in the Virgin Isles, I'm here to help.
Let's say someone lives in New York, but they also have, international, maybe business in Canada or even Europe or Mexico. Does that have is there anything you can't handle when it comes to, a client, a business owner, let's say, who has, does business in other countries as well?
So generally, when somebody has international income, I will find a person, an enrolled agent or an attorney that practices in international tax law, because that's a whole different ballgame than the US. I mean, I can handle the US part of it, but the international piece is generally a separate piece, and that is a piece that I do not work with.
Okay, but and that assumes that those other countries' tax authorities have
Each country, we may have treaties with them, and you have to know what the treaties are and what they involve and what they cover. And I know this because I've done a lot of 1040 non-residents. I live in a town that has a lot of college. It's a huge college community, and we have a lot of H-1 visas that come over for school, and so they make money here. And so what are they making money on? And we have to look up the treaties. I don't do those any longer, but there was a time when I was looking at treaties constantly. So there's a lot involved. And again, it also depends on what country they live in, what that country's laws are. And that is why it's better to have somebody that understands the tax laws for that particular area.
If someone who is wondering, okay, is this something I need to find someone with international expertise or not, that would they be able to contact you first and help, and you could help them figure that out?
I'm here to guide in any directive I can. I'm here to help. If I can help them completely, great, depending on what their international issues are. And if I cannot, then let's find somebody that can. I have a group of people in the membership of TRN that they're everywhere. They're all over the place. And I have international people there that I can reach out and touch and say, hey, I need some assistance.
Okay. So what's the best way, or what are some good ways for people to get in touch with you or find out more about you and what you do?
Well, the first thing they can do is Google me. I mean, you can Google my name and just make sure you spell the last name correctly, but I'm going to come up. You can Google my business name, find my website. My website has a lot of information on it. I have a newsletter you can sign up for. So I'm not non-visible. Look me up on LinkedIn, Facebook. Just Google me. Google me and you will find me. I promise that.
Okay. And it's Felecia
Correct.
Dixson.
That is correct.
Anything else you would like to add? Maybe something that you haven't had a chance to mention, especially addressing someone who may be feeling very overwhelmed or even embarrassed and not sure if, or hesitant to make that first call or send that first email to you.
So I would say to anybody who's out there that is sitting in this situation and just not sure where to go. Embarrassment, I understand that you're embarrassed, but we are kind of like going to the ER, right? So when you go to the ER because you don't feel good, we have to do triage and we have to ask a lot of questions. And we're like the doctor and we say, okay, you have to tell us everything. And no judgment. There's no judgment. Everybody falls down. It's a matter of now let's pick you up and get you back on solid ground so that you can move forward, whatever that looks like. And I realize the embarrassment piece is there. And you feel like a real fool because you go, I can't believe I let this happen to me. It happens. Life happens. And I say that with all respect. We never know when life is going to throw us a curveball. And we have to work through those curveballs, and we have to learn to say it's okay. And so pick up the phone, give me a call, email me, whatever it is, message me on Facebook, message me on LinkedIn. I am here to help. I am not here to make a judgment of any sorts. I just want to see you be able to rest peacefully at night, knowing you're in good hands and that we're going to get this taken care of together.
So if I could say it maybe in my own words, if you have issues with the IRS, you have options. The sooner you act, the better, the more options you have. So don't delay. So my guest today has been Felecia Dixson, founder of Dixson Tax Resolution Services. If you're facing tax debt, unfiled returns, wage garnishments, IRS notices, Felecia offers free consultations and honest guidance without judgment. Thanks for listening to Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and join us again for another conversation focused on helping you grow smarter, stronger, and more confidently. Thank you, Felecia, for joining me, and thank you, everyone, for listening.
Registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, PAS. Security products and advisory services offered through PAS, member FINRA, SIPC. The Bullfinch Group is not an affiliate or subsidiary of PAS. This firm is an agency of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. Life insurance offered through the Bullfinch Group Insurance Agency, LLC, an affiliate of the Bullfinch Group, LLC. The Bullfinch Group, LLC is not licensed to sell insurance. California Insurance License Number OF 11617. Links to external sites are provided for your convenience in locating related information and services. Guardian, its subsidiaries, agents, and employees expressly disclaim any responsibility for and do not maintain, control, recommend, or endorse third-party sites, organizations, products, or services, and make no representation as to the completeness, suitability, or quality thereof. 2024-169104, expiration 226.